Mounce, chapter 17, Mounce, BBG, chapter 17, sentence 7 starts off with this clause, and you have a negation here with may. So, kind of pull that out, and because what he gives you is the one who loves, but that's actually ho agapon, and then you have this negation. So, the way Mounce is going to treat that is to say something like the one who does not love. What I would tell you is, you haven't gotten there yet, but this is essentially a present participle, which I would translate with an ing word. You don't necessarily have to turn it into or morph it into a relative clause. You can just stick with it, closer to as is, and say the one not loving. The one not loving. So either one of those is just fine, but it's a subject because you got that definite article, so you're ahead of the game there. But always remember, he's he's going to give you the clause minus some of the other particles that you may not want to miss. Like if there's some kind of negation going on, a lot of times if he gives you the translation, he's not going to include the negation. And that's what we have here. So you want to make sure that you include that in your translation, the one not loving or the one who doesn't love. Either one of those is just fine. Then you have may. This is, obviously a first-person personal pronoun. Now, you would expect it to be, the one not loving me. You would expect it to be that. But, if you were wanting to make sure you were right, and you were trying to think it through, and maybe you haven't memorized all those personal pronoun endings, do the process of elimination. I mean, hopefully by now genitive singular, you'd be looking for an omicron upsilon. That's not what you see. If you were looking for a dative, you'd be looking for an iota ending, and that's not what you see. If you were thinking about the nominative, you'd be thinking about ego, and hopefully you know ego by now, so it's not that. So the only thing you're left with is accusative. And, and if you have memorized it, you know that the accusative in both first and second person personal pronoun, the ending is an epsilon. So you would be correct. But bottom line is there are times and places where it's good just to, if you don't know all the pieces and that epsilon ending kind of looks odd to you, think through the other things that you already know in terms of case endings. And ask yourself, does it fit? Because in this particular case, the only fit is in the accusative. So anyway, back to it. The one not loving me. Then you have the rest of this. Let's just go ahead and go down to the verb here, because you have an accusative here. That's accusative plural, right? You see the mu is going to be possessive because there you really do have the genitive ending. So, the words of me or my words, right? Because that's accusative plural. But because it's accusative, you're going, okay, well, that's a direct object. So let's take a look at the verb. Well, part of that, of course, is the negation. So you're going to go, doesn't whatever. Hopefully by now you've memorized this vocabulary word as tereo. And as soon as you say tereo, it's a contract verb. You know that when you see that circumflex, that should be your sort of telltale sign that, that's one of the things that the circumflex can do is tell you that what you're looking at is could be a contract verb. And then as soon as you say tereo, you're right. So then it's a present active indicative. In this case, with the iota ending, tells you that it's third singular. He, she, or it. And then with the negation from tereo, he, she, or it does not keep, right? And then you have this direct object clause, my words. So going back then, you got the one not loving me. And if I did it just word by word, the words of me does not keep. So, that's not hard. That shouldn't be a stretch for you to just go, okay, well, all I got to do is move that to the spot that it would be as a direct object in English. So the one not loving me does not keep my words. and you're done. So hopefully not a big deal there. Then we move on to second sentence where he says, and you got your subject. That's obvious enough. Definite article gives it away, so you know you're good there. The word, and then you have this relative pronoun that we really need to come back to, because I really want you guys to be familiar with how relative pronouns work, because they're so different in Greek than in English. And it's important. Theologically, it's important quite often. So, good idea to have a really good handle on how they work. So we'll come back to that. Let's just translate it as which and keep going at this point. And the word which, and then you have the verb here. And hopefully at this point, if you've been listening to the sentence videos, you know that anytime you have a tau epsilon or a theta epsilon, you should immediately, when you're looking at a verb and it's one of those two endings, you immediately think second person plural, think y'all, or you all if you don't want to do the southern thing. That's just fine. But in this case, from akuo, obviously, which is I hear, so second person plural is going to be y'all, y'all hear. And the word which y'all hear. Then you have another negation with an equative verb of it is. And the word which y'all hear is not. And then you have a genitive, third declension, but it's still genitive. So we'll treat it as a possessive and say mine. Okay? So, and the word which y'all hear is not mine. So that shouldn't be too tough. Again, part of the trick with a sentence like this is you have all these negations, and you really got to think through, sort of the natural translation as, into English when you hit those. But let's jump back to the relative pronoun. Remember case, number, gender. For number, gender, you look left to the antecedent. For case, you look to the right and see how it's, what it's replacing within the relative clause. So for number, gender, you've got a han. You're saying, okay, it's masculine singular. What's the antecedent that's masculine singular? Well, of course, the near antecedent would be logos. Guess what? It's masculine singular. Therefore, you can conclude that han is the logos is the antecedent for han, the relative pronoun han. So that's easy enough. Then you've got case, and followed by the relative clause. And if you look at the new should tell you that it's accusative. When you see a new, that's one of the first things you should be thinking is accusative. So and that's what we have here, which means it's probably going to replace the direct object. We're thinking about the relative clause. It's followed by y'all here. You know that what the antecedent is word. So then we say, okay, it's replacing the direct object within the relative clause. Then you take this verb and you say, y'all hear what? Y'all hear the word. Well, that makes perfect sense. So that tells you everything you need to know about the relative pronoun. Again, masculine singular because it refers back to logos, which it matches up with, and accusative because it's replacing the direct object, and y'all hear the word. The word would be the direct object, and that makes perfect sense. So hopefully that works for everybody.